All right, good stuff. So welcome everybody to the start of this IRONMAN UK webinar in collaboration with Team Oxygenaddict. What we hope we can do tonight for all of you is answer some of the questions that you've got around how things possibly didn't go the way you hoped they would in the race and give you some ideas around that. So a few bits of housekeeping for those of you who are on live. If you've got any questions you would like answers to, there's a chat box there you can bring up. Bring up the chat box. You can either type your question or query in the chat box and we'll answer it. You can just say, I've got a question, and we'll get you up face to face. And there should be time, hopefully, to talk to a whole bunch of you tonight and go through the things that you want to discuss. Like I said, we've got some pre-sent in questions from some of the people who answered there, and they might not be able to join us live, so we'll go through those. So first up, are any of those of you guys who are on live at the moment, have you got things you'd like to ask, questions you've got, things you'd like to discuss about how the race went and some feedback that we can give to you? I think at the moment we've got Nicholas, Sean, Beth and Victor sitting there whose faces we can see, and everyone else is being kind of shy at the moment. But if you want to just, you got a question, Sean's there, right? I'll ask you to unmute there, Sean. And hopefully that should give you permission. Great stuff. Let's kick off with you, mate. How you doing?
I'm very good, Robin. Just quickly, firstly, you guys do a fantastic job. I confess,
Thank you.
I confess I'm not coached by you, but I listen avidly, and you deliver solid advice in a really empathetic way.
Oh,
and I applaud you for all you do. So it's just stunning. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. I really appreciate that. It's really kind of you to say.
Thank you. Trying to remember my question now. Yes, I've got.
So how did your race go? That's the first thing. How did IRONMAN UK go for you?
I finished my second Ironman.
Congratulations.
I made the mistake of missing a curb after 13 miles on the run, and nearly knocked myself out. So I spent 5 minutes lying on the floor. Had to then walk in a bloody state for the last 13 miles and ended up in a medical tent. But apart from that, it went very well. Apart from the wins. But I got there. In a series,
you know what? Only an Ironman can knock himself out halfway through a marathon, walk 13 miles covered in blood, and describe it as. Apart from that, everything went pretty well. So,
well, it was good to that point. It was good to that point. In all seriousness, I've got no stats on how many people actually finished and made the cutoff, because I saw quite a few people going around, and I was thinking, and actually saw some people who then did drop out, etc. You know, it was a tough day out there. A tough day in every sense, particularly the wind on the bike. I'm just interested, really.
Yeah, and from what we heard, there were 1,200 starters and 800 finishes on the day. So
wow,
somewhere in the region of a 35% DNF rate on the day.
Ooh.
So it is one of the toughest courses in the world at its best, and add the weather into the mix on the day and the incredibly strong winds, it made it even more challenging, as I'm sure you experienced, right?
Yeah, and I just finished. I don't want to dominate this, but I've got a viewpoint that actually I think, whilst they couldn't cater for the weather, it is a factor living in Bolton. I live on the course. I live on the course regularly. I'd venture to say it's actually now the course they set was too hard.
Do you think so?
I think so. Clearly they set the bar high, and we should know what we enter when we do these things. But actually, I think that extra bit of course, extra 300 meters that got added at the end when the course changed, and the road surface, which wasn't great at all.
Yeah.
You add to that, a 35% dropout will in fact be affected by the weather. I think they set the bar a bit too high on this one. Maybe that's indicative as to why entries go down, and they're now down to 70.3 next year. That's my view.
Yeah.
Others will say, well, it's meant to be hard, isn't it? Of course it is, but I think actually they set it a bit too hard this year.
Yeah. A few people have said to us, we're surprised how hard it was. I guess all we can say is that the more prepared you are for the course you face, the better you are. And obviously yourself, knowing that you lived on the course and you could train in it, I think you've got the benefit of the things that Andy said on a few webinars, which is if you possibly can get yourself to the course, see the course, train on the course, then you know what you've let yourself in for and you can really prepare for it. Because I think there are lots of people who come and they're very, very surprised by how hard that course is and by how difficult it is. And I think you're in the lucky, well, I say lucky, you're lucky to get to train on the course in one respect. But you know what you've let yourself in for, and that's one of the key tenets we've said all along the way is be prepared for the challenge of the course and the weather if you possibly can be.
Yeah. Hey, that's my contribution for what it's worth.
Hey, well, listen, congratulations on finishing. That's a real feather in your cap that you've managed to do that on a really difficult course on a really difficult day. And in fact, as things are played out at the moment, it might be a finish line at the last ever Ironman UK held in Bolton. So yeah, congratulations, mate.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
Should we have a look and see if any of the people who submitted questions?
Yeah, it doesn't look like any of the people who we've got questions from have actually come onto the call at the moment. Okay. So that's fine. Let's go through the guys who are here with us. So Victor, you've just said you're currently training for Ironman, but you've not participated in any of them yet. Which Ironman are you training for at the moment, Victor? I'll get you to unmute yourself and we can talk.
Well, I want to do full Ironman. I never did any of them. Like I never did even triathlon or 42 kilometers, like running. But I'm still doing so about half year. I'm training about half year.
Okay.
And yeah, and I would like to know that how much I should train or what I need to eat or for this.
Yeah, okay. So this is the first webinar of ours that you've come to, is it? You've not seen any of the other ones before. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'll have you do, rather than use up the time tonight, because mainly we want to be helping the guys who've done Ironman UK.
Sure. Yeah. I just want to listen what you're saying, yeah.
No problem, man. Drop me an email to help@oxygenaddict.com. We'll send you a link to some of the previous webinars that we've done, and that will answer a ton of your questions.
All right.
And hopefully that will give you a real good framework.
That'd be great.
Give you some podcast episodes to listen to. But I wish you all the luck with your training, man.
Thank you.
Awesome stuff.
I think it's worth us talking about some of the main themes that have come through with the feedback we've had from athletes that raced.
Yeah.
100%. Because I think it's gonna resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so. So the first, I suppose there's three main areas, aren't there, that seem to have come back.
Yeah.
And the people have emailed us through the three main factors that seem to have been a big effect on whether people have finished or not. Firstly, it's the preparation part of it. Have you been out and got the appropriate training done? I know we've done several of the webinars describing sort of how we would have people train. By and large, feedback has been it's been quite binary, hasn't it?
Yes.
I've managed to do what you said and I managed to finish, or I didn't manage to do the training that you set and I didn't finish. I managed to do some of the stuff, but I'd only swum 1 mile or I'd only biked 50 miles in the run up to it. And that again underlines one of the things that we've said all the way through, which is that the physical preparation part for it, I think people confuse Ironman and marathon and even Ironman and half Ironman. You can kind of get through the marathon and the 70.3 if you're a fit person. It's just too much of a jump when you get to the Ironman level. You have to be properly physically prepared. If you've not, I honestly believe this, if you've not managed to get the training done and you have the option to defer your race to the point where you do have the option to get the training done. I've got loads of respect for people who turn up and give it a go, but I would say it's such a massive investment of time and money. I would actually move your race to bump it to another year or bump it to another race when you will have the chance to be properly physically prepared.
Yeah, we treat it's almost as if the training and the physical preparation part of it is like, it's almost like table stakes, isn't it? It's what you need.
Yeah,
it's what you need to give it a go. And then exponentially more than 70.3 or any shorter distances, there's a lot that has to go your way on the day. So things that you can't control. There are things that you can't control the weather, but you can have a plan to adapt what you do on the day should certain things happen with the weather, like the wind and the rain and so on. But no matter how fit you are, a lot still has to go your way for you to have it, to make it to the finish line, never mind to actually have a good day. So I think that is very much worth bearing in mind, and it's why we bang the drum so much about the the preparation aspect being so important, and especially with like the majority of people on here are busy age groupers, you're balancing training with work, with families, with all of those other things that most of the time have to take priority over training. You know, it's a very, very fine balance, isn't it, most of the time?
Yeah.
And that's why getting the training right is so important, because you probably haven't got any time to waste to put towards training that isn't kind of progressing you that bit closer to being where you need to be for race day.
So I think that's the first part of the 3, isn't it? Getting the physical preparation part of it right, getting the training part sorted. The second part of it that seems to play the biggest part in things that people have said is to do with fueling. It's either things you eat, things you drink, so the amount of fluid you've had, or the electrolyte balance in the things you've had. That's the next part of it. Having a plan for what you're going to have is a big part of that, but then actually delivering that plan on race day is also the next part of it. And I think hopefully we put that in place by giving people that sort of fueling planning document to say, here's roughly how much of each you're going to need, and test it in training. So that's the second thing that seemed to not go right for people. The third thing is the pacing aspect. And then a lot of cases at a course like Bolton, where it's so tough and it's so windy, it's pacing yourself well enough that you're going to be able to run a good marathon, but also pacing yourself so you actually get to the finish line within the bike cutoff. And there've been multiple people have emailed to say, you know, I thought I was fit enough to do this, but in the end, I wasn't fit enough to actually make it to the finish line and beat the cutoff of the race, which is really difficult to hear, isn't it?
Yeah. And then, you know, like we were saying before, you have to plan for some of the unexpected eventualities. So whether that's mechanicals or whether, like, we've had a lot of comments about the wind, haven't we, and how much the wind has affected things. And the road surface and the technicalities of the climbs and the descents. Like the IRONMAN UK bike course on paper, if you just look at the stats of it, is a very difficult bike course. Probably one of the most difficult on the Ironman circuit. Then you factor in the reality that the Bolton course brings with the types of climbs and descents, the quality of the road surface, and then the weather that you all experienced on the day. It's a whole other kettle of fish.
And I think a big part of that comes back down to the preparation angle of it. It's to sit down and go, forewarned is forearmed. This bike course is probably an hour slower than most of the other bike courses on the European circuit, even with relatively decent weather. I think if you're going to Austria to do 6 hours, you're looking at 7 to 7.5 hours on the IRONMAN UK, which all of a sudden, for someone who might be going to Austria to do 7 hours, 7:30, 8 hours there, it's meaning they're right up against it with a cutoff, which is really, really difficult. So again, the 3 threads that came back from all of the answers we had were something didn't go right with my nutrition and I ended up with an upset stomach. Something didn't go right with my pacing and I ended up so destroyed at the end of the bike that if I made the cutoff, I couldn't run very well. Or something didn't go right with my preparation and I didn't manage to get the levels of training done in the run up to it, and therefore I didn't actually manage to get to the finish of the swim or the bike or the run. And really all the things that we or the emails that we got can really be summed up into those 3 things. So we can talk about all of these things again, but essentially that's what it comes down to. It's the preparation, it's the fueling, and it's the pacing on race day are the 3 things that are going to trip people up, or a combination of the 3, isn't it?
Yeah. I think for the people who are here, I'm guessing some, if not everyone that's here, had some sort of issue, whether it was expected or not on the day. This is the time to be quite open and reflective with everything about your preparation for the day and then the execution on the day itself, especially around things like nutrition, hydration, pacing, and any of the challenges that things like weather played in those areas. So we had quite a few comments from people who were saying, oh, you know, I got through the bike leg, but then by kilometre 20 of the marathon, I was a mess and I had to walk it in. Well, our kind of comment or pushback or question for those people to go and ask themselves is, did you pace the bike leg properly? Did you fuel effectively? And what does properly and effectively look like? And if you don't know what the answer to that is, then the chances are you've caused yourself a bit of a problem there. It's really important for any Ironman course, but particularly for something like Bolton, to know exactly the intensity that you need to be riding the bike at to both obviously get in and achieve the cutoff, but to give yourself the best possible chance of running strongly off a strong bike leg. And if you don't know what that number is, whether it's heart rate, power, whatever it is you ride to, then it's essentially just guesswork. And when people talk to us about riding off feel, that's a bit of a red flag.
There's always going to be people who, you know, who don't have power meter or who don't have a heart rate monitor. But our advice to you is, like, if you want to get into the sport, the heart rate monitor and the power meter are almost like cheating. You really are fumbling in the dark if you're just going off feel, especially when it comes to trying to run well off the bike. The technology has improved so much in recent years, and it's got so much less expensive than it was even 5 years ago, that to get yourself a pair of power meter pedals that will help you exactly measure how hard you can ride on the bike and make the cutoff and still be able to run well, that information is really invaluable to you. And that's really what we try and do with the athletes that we coach, isn't it? It's to give them a plan to say, here's how hard you can afford to ride and still have a really high level of confidence that you're going to be able to run well. Now, the challenge on the Bolton course, I think, is because it's so difficult, some people are using all the fitness they've got to even get to the end of that bike leg. And, you know, it's not going to be a case in the future because this race isn't going to be run again. But for those of you I know who've qualified for Kona off the back of this, I think, Nicola, I remember you saying in your notes, you qualified for Kona, didn't you, at your race? So going into the race in Kona, to be able to look at the course demands that you've got there in front of you, or for anyone who's racing another Ironman coming up, to look at the demands of the course that you've got coming up and go, right, for our coached athletes, we'll say to them, you have a certain training stress budget you can burn up on the bike and still be able to run well. Let's backwards fill from that point and say, right, that means you can afford to ride at this speed and then still be really confident that you can run well off the bike. And it becomes less about how fast can I go on the bike, and it becomes more about delivering a specific power and pace that you know you can then go and run really well off the bike.
Yeah, you'll have heard us say this many times before, but in any Ironman, the day and the race, in inverted commas, really starts at sort of kilometre 25 of the run, and pretty much everything that you're doing up until that point is about protecting yourself for that last 10, 15, 20k, because that is where the wheels fall off for a lot of people. And when they fall off, especially on a day like many people experienced at Bolton, they really fall off.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna see if Tim's there. Tim, you've popped a question in. I'm gonna ask you to unmute yourself. And let's see if we can have a chat about your question about the win. So how was your experience of the race?
Yeah, brutal. It was my first triathlon, so yeah.
Okay.
It was naive.
But not all like that.
Yeah. No.
So how did you get on overall?
Yeah, good. It finished in 13:22, so I was really pleased with that.
Well done, yeah. And it was your first ever triathlon.
Yeah.
Chapeau, sir. That's quite some going. Hey, you've got a future in the sport if you can turn that out in your first Ironman.
I don't know.
Is that you? Are you done? Had enough after that one?
I'm done, to be honest. Yeah.
That's what they all say.
So your question then was around, I mean, what was your experience of how the wind affected you and the time compared to how you thought you would go?
I think I probably also didn't realize how hard the bike course was. You sort of like the map and think, oh yeah, okay, that is quite a lot of incline, but it'll be fine. But actually, you're basically constantly going up or down. So I think the two combined, I was hoping to go for 12 hours. So probably like an hour and a half slower than expected, but yeah, probably naivety. But I'm just, I was interested if the wind makes like a, percentage difference in your view.
It's very hard to tell and it's very hard to quantify, but from the numbers that we saw, I'd say it's probably not unreasonable that the bike added on between 30 and 60 minutes to most people's bike splits. I think the very fastest age groups are disproportionately not affected by it being really windy for two reasons. The first is they tend to be extremely aerodynamic. And the second thing is they know how to ride in the wind in both directions and kind of make the most of it when they can and how to minimize the effect on it when they can't. So I think it's tempting to look at the winners and go, well, this guy still did a 5:30 bike split, so surely it wasn't. But I really believe that those best riders, they're out there preparing for those races in those kind of conditions. I've got a couple of the guys who finish in the top three are all training partners or coached athletes of mine. And I know for a fact, the kind of day like that you had on Saturday, where there were squalls and 40-knot winds, they'd be going out in that on purpose to train in it so that they could prepare. It's like the cherry on the cake for them, so that they can prepare when it's really, really windy. They'll learn how to ride on it. They'll have the disc wheel on and the aero helmet and the full kit when it's super, super windy. And they'll learn how the bike responds in a headwind and a cross tailwind and know how to make the most of it. I think for most people, talking to guys in transition the day before, the situation was that a lot of them had never been out in conditions like that and would actively avoid it, right? I think that makes sense, doesn't it? On some level, if it's like that, you don't want to go outside. But that's something we can control for our next race if we go on ahead and do it. And it is one of those preparation elements. If it's really windy, go out for a bike ride. If it's horrible and rainy and overcast, go to the open water swim venue anyway. I think a lot of people fall into the sort of like, I'll only go for an open water swim if it's a sunny day with a blue sky and it's nice and warm and it feels great. I understand that, but it doesn't prepare you for a race day like Bolton 2023 for sure.
No, I think that's fair.
Yeah. So listen, I don't think we can let you be done, Tim, after one Ironman. I think we've got to enable you to go somewhere else where the weather conditions are pleasant and the course is faster and see what you're capable of. Because if you can go 13.5 on debut on that course, you've got some natural talent there for sure.
Oh, thank you. And I just to reiterate what Sean said, I think these webinars have been absolutely so helpful. The one about like hitting the benchmarks, I think it was the initial one. And then the podcast about switching to RPE because of the wind. I think without those two, I would have been absolutely snookered. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad it helped, man. Thank you for your kind words. It's very kind of you. Nice one. Beth, can we tempt you to come on and have a chat? You're one of only two others who's brave enough to show your face. How did you get on in the race?
Well, it was my first one as well. And I made it round, which is good. Hurrah. A bit slower, well, definitely a lot slower than I anticipated, but I did the course recce, the swim course recce the day before. And I mean, I'm so glad I did it the day before, because I think if I'd got there on the Sunday morning and seen the lake how it was, it just would have mentally thrown me off, I think. So I suppose I learned a few things like that. I found fueling the most difficult.
Yeah, okay.
Mainly just because I knew the bike course would be tough, but I don't think I anticipated it being that tough. It's just the up and down constantly. I just found it difficult to stick to, like, I need to eat now, however I'm going miles however quickly down this hill, and then by the time I was like, oh, I've missed that point, you then have to go up the hill. It was just really difficult, and I kind of bonked a bit like on the run. but still made it round and was so happy that I've done it and want to do another one, but I don't really want to do another one that's like that. I think that's, yeah, that was a bit of a shock, but it's good sense of achievement anyway. But I suppose I just wanted to come on here and see whether it was just me who found it particularly difficult, or whether there were other people who thought the wind, because I just was flying about all over the place on the bike. Just I'm not particularly heavy, so I think it just pushed me all over the place. It was a good day out anyway. I just thought I'd come on here and see how other people found it. Yeah.
I think you'll hear from other people speaking that, you know, the wind was a massive factor.
Yeah.
And you make a really good point about the how do I eat if there's only limited options of actual places on the course to eat. It's very different, isn't it? Riding on race day on a course that's either up or down or round a corner, or you're braking or you're accelerating. It's very different to being on Zwift, where you can eat and drink every 20 minutes.
When you want,
a nice flat, gentle road, or even sometimes when it is that windy. I'm sure there are times you don't want to take your hands off the handlebars to try and have an eat or a drink because it's so windy.
Yeah, it seems like a silly thing to say, and I was like, I don't know how, I must be doing something wrong, but it just disrupts your rhythm. I think if there are like gales coming across, you're like, oh, I need to take something, but now's just not the right time. And then you kind of, I'm like, well, maybe I'll just have to stop. But then you just don't really want to stop because it just throws you off. And then it just mentally disrupts things going along, to the point where I was like, on the bike, I just didn't look at how far I'd gone. I just had to kind of mark it off as 1 lap and 2 lap, and I just knew that I was within the time limit, and I was like, I've just got to try and get through it. Yeah, it was nuts. But
well, let me ask you this: when you were in training, how many days did you go out on the bike when the weather was anything like that?
So I did do quite a bit more in the heat, so I was more worried about it being really hot. So I went out when it was, I mean, like on days where it was stupidly hot, and I was like, I don't know if this is dangerous to do, but it looks like it's going to be this warm rather than windy. So I kind of chose days where it was particularly warm to go out as opposed to really windy. Well, because I'm based in London, so it was just completely different than when I went to Bolton. It was just a lot colder, so I had to wear. You're
right. It was forecast to be really hot, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Until about the Wednesday before the race, and then that storm front blew in, and the weather across the country changed. I guess that's the one thing going forward for when you do your next one, which you will.
I do want.
Right.
I do want to do one. I feel like if I can do that one, surely I can make it round.
Yeah, totally. So the thing for the next one then is, you've seen what happens if you have a really super windy race day and you haven't trained when it's been super windy. It's really hard. Mm-hmm. That's the next level for your triathlon development. It's going, okay, proved I can complete one. How do I prepare even more for the next one? And the fact you've gone out and trained deliberately in the heat, I think is really good. That shows you've applied yourself to what are the things that are a threat to me finishing. Well, being really hot was, it looked like it was going to be the thing that people were going to struggle with. So it's just adding in the riding when it's raining, riding when it's cold, riding when it's windy. What do I wear when it's cold and windy? It's having the answers to that stuff and being prepared for it, isn't it? Back to preparation again.
I think the other more general point is, you know, the old everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face saying. It's all well and good knowing, for example, how many calories you need to take on or how much fluid you need to drink, and having that, you know, we make a really big deal of this with our athletes, is know what you need to fuel yourself properly and effectively over the course of the day. But then there's another layer to that. It's all of the what ifs. It's the plan B, and it's the, you know, and to be fair, like usually it's, what if I lose my nutrition? What if I drop a gel? What if my bottle bounces out of the cage? They're usually the types of considerations for Bolton given the roads, rather than what do I do if I physically can't let go of the handlebars to take any fuel on? But like the more general point is a good one, which is when you're going through that planning process for the day, think about all of those possible scenarios. And you know, I'm not saying write War and Peace and have a million different plans for every scenario, but even the process of thinking it through will serve you in very good stead for the day. It'll just enable you to be that little bit calmer. Hopefully you'll be able to call on a particular strategy or thought process or something that you've had that will help you navigate that particular situation you find yourself in. So that's a more general point. I mean, I'm not sure there are many solutions to not being able to take your hands off the bars because you're going to get blown into a hedge. But like the general point hopefully is useful for people. Yeah, for sure. Hey, well, listen, well done, Beth.
Thank you.
It's a massive feather in your cap to have completed Bolton, especially this year. Yeah. So congratulations. Are you going to Kona as well? Are you another Kona qualifier?
No, I didn't make it, but that's okay. I realised a lap in on the bike that perhaps it wouldn't be for me this time. So I'll try another one.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear, but well done.
Thank you.
Right, we have to hear from Nicola. Come on, we have to hear the Nicola story. I know you're sitting there being all shy and you've got your sunnies on. I'll ask you to unmute. Come on, let's tell us your story, Nicola.
Oh, right. Well, I got my first road bike about 4 or 5 years ago. I learned how to open water swim about 3 years ago. I'm 54 and I'm retired, and I just thought I'd give triathlon a go. And I thought, what do I need to do? Well, I need a road bike and I need to learn to swim. So I've done 3 halves and I loved them, absolutely loved them. And I thought, right, what's next? I've just got to do Bolton. I've got to do it. So so I booked it last year. And then going on these podcasts with you, I'm going, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? I was so worried, absolutely terrified. I mean, my family will tell you I was just in bits, really. I did the course. I've done the course twice on bike. The most I've done is twice in one go. I've been in Penny Flash. But I'd only managed to swim it once, and I've been on a bike quite a lot, but I've never ever swum 2.4 miles before, and I've never cycled 112 miles before, and I've never done a marathon before. But all I had in my head going round was fuel, hydrate, fuel and hydrate, with you lot in my head all the time. And I tried the gels, and in the end, I couldn't take the gels. I had jelly babies and I had flapjack just to keep me going, and drinking, and the salt tablets as well. The swim was quite remarkable, actually. It's my best time in the swim. And I came out of the swim and there did seem to be nobody around me. Well, actually, I got cramp in both my legs about 10 meters from the end, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to drown. And I thought, don't need your legs, just use your arms and get out. So and then they haul you out, and I was all right. My husband was there, and I said, where is everybody? And I said, how did I do? And he said, you did amazing, Nick. I did 1 hour 36 in the swim. I couldn't believe it.
Done. Yeah. Well done.
And then ran off, and then on the bike, and the wind, like Beth's saying, was incredible. It was so scary. I've never been so terrified on the bike, because I'm not very heavy like Beth, and it was frightening, thinking I'm going to be slammed into the wall or just thrown right over, right on the tops there, wasn't it, Beth? It was just awful. And then coming down the descent from the top, and it was frightening, really frightening. And like Beth, it was struggling to eat, to take your hands off the bars to actually eat, because you're fighting with the wind. It was awful. It was worse than I thought it was going to be on the bike. I was actually praying. I said, please let the wind drop for the next round. He must have been out at the time, I think, because he didn't hear me. And anyway, I eventually got through the bike, and I was frightened I'd missed the cut-off. But nobody stopped me, so I thought, right, keep going, keep going. And then I got onto the run. Nobody stopped me, so I thought I must be in time. And then I felt so sick on the run. I walked one lap virtually. I just felt terrible. And then the last lap, somebody said to me, come on, love, you're going to have to get this. Don't miss the cut-off. So then I ran the last lap non-stop all the way around. And I came in and I just thought, thank God it's over. It wasn't the best experience, but now I've done it. Yeah, it's I'm glad I've done it. Yeah,
well done. I guess my question to you is, do you have a record of, I'd like to get to the bottom of why you felt sick on the run, and whether that's a connection to, you know, obviously it's very difficult and challenging to eat and drink to a schedule you'd usually like to, or whether it was a combination of, you know, you had to go to jelly babies, as you said, which I think actually, fair play, credit to you for having a plan B and going to that when plan A wasn't working. Did you feel as though it was the kind of sickness where the food you'd had wasn't digesting, or did you feel it was the kind of sickness where you, I don't know, you had some kind of bug, for example?
No, I don't think it was a bug.
Okay.
I was trying to eat at the aid stations. I was having banana. And then I was thinking, what can I have? I tried a gel and I thought, I can't have that. I'll just be sick. So I had flat Coke, water. I just kept drinking as much as I could, just sips basically. The Coke, the Gator juice, whatever it was. And then just a few heads of jelly babies. But I couldn't stomach a lot really. I don't know what it was. But I just couldn't wait to finish.
Well, here I think there's a bit of learning here for you to go forward, because obviously Kona is going to be a whole other level to Bolton, and the chances are it's going to be windy in Kona, because it almost always is really windy in Kona, and it's going to be hot and it's going to be humid. So the fueling part's always going to be important, but the hydration and the electrolytes part is going to be even more important for you going forward into Kona. So it's to have that really solid plan of how many calories an hour am I going to need, how much fluid am I going to need, and how much electrolytes need to go in that. And then have some way of keeping track of that when you're in Kona, because I think when it's really super hot, the plan of I'm just going to drink as much as I can at the aid stations is probably going to come back and bite you on the bum a bit more.
Right. Okay.
So I think it's to have a plan where you can go, right, I'm going to aim to have X amount per hour, and it's going to have X amount of electrolytes in each bottle. And then I know what I'm taking in. And then when you get to the point where you think, right, I'm at the halfway point on the bike and I'm starting to feel thirsty, you can think to yourself, well, I need to drink more then. Or conversely, it might be going really well by that point. But it's go back to that planning document we sent out in one of our last webinars and really address that. See if you can work out how many calories you had at Bolton, how much you drank roughly, and then try and get yourself to the point where you've got more of a more formed nutrition and hydration plan. I think it'll really well to set you up for the run at Kona.
I think I need to practice taking more gels actually.
That's another thing. Have a look at what they've got available on the course and try them in training. Because if you can try them in training and you don't like them, at least you know you're not going to like them on race day. Then you've got a plan. You've got to take your own stuff then. If you try them and it turns out, I don't know, whatever they have on the course in Kona, probably Morton. If you try them and they're okay, then that's brilliant, because that's half of your challenge of carrying stuff kind of sorted. You can just get it at an aid station, right?
Yeah.
But it's all about have that plan A and then have plan B if the aid stations aren't going to work for you.
Okay. I must say, can I say thank you to Andy for it was him that said get in that water as much as you can, because otherwise I wouldn't have done, and I needed to, and I'm glad I did.
You were worried about making the swim cut off back then, weren't you?
I was absolutely terrified. Yes, yeah, I didn't think I'd do it.
Great
so
job. Brilliant.
Yeah, but thank you.
One other thing that I'd add, particularly to do with Kona, is there's an extra element of the unknown. So you're not going to get a chance to ride the bike course. You're probably not going to get a chance to ride in the types of conditions that you're going to face out there. So don't fall into that trap of planning for the best case scenario. So when you're looking at whether you're riding on power or heart rate or whatever it is, and you're kind of going, right, well, I think hopefully I'll be able to ride X amount of hours on the bike. Well, if it's an hour longer, then work backwards from that. You know, if it's an hour longer because actually the heat's affecting you a lot more than you might expect, or the humidity, or
the headwind.
Yeah. You know, there's all these extra factors that could impact your plan for the day. So go through that process of thinking, right, what's my plan B? If I'm out an hour longer on the bike, or if it looks like I'm going to be out for an hour extra, how do I adapt my strategy for the day, both in terms of pacing, intensity, hydration, nutrition, that sort of thing? Because the other thing a lot of people fall into the trap of, and we've heard a few people say this about Bolton, is I was out on the bike for much longer than I expected to be. And so I didn't have enough fuel because I expected to be out for 7 hours and I was out for 8 hours and I only had 7 hours worth of fuel. And that comes back to bite you later on. So Kona is going to be a whole other set of challenges. But I think when you kind of come back to first principles, a lot of it is kind of similar in terms of how you would prepare and how you would think through the various scenarios that you know, that process that you went through for Bolton.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Really well done finishing.
Can't believe it.
Congratulations qualifying for Kona. That's just fantastic. And I hope you have a really awesome race. Will you drop us a line after it and let us know how you get on?
I will do. Yes. Thank you so much. It's down to you guys though. You've pointed me in the right direction. I need to get a heart rate monitor now and a computer and a power meter, because I haven't got anything like that.
You've earned them. You've earned them by being a Kona qualifier. You can buy as much kit as you want at this point.
Thank you anyway. Thank you so much for everything you've done.
You're absolutely welcome. Well, that's just about all the questions people have put up. Just before we wrap this up, we just want to give almost like a little plug for the coaching, really, don't we? And say, if any of you guys are interested in working with us in the future and being coached athletes, we'd love to chat with you about it. I think the thing that we try and do is have our athletes get to the start line with as many of the unknowables dealt with, and as just totally confident on race day that they've done all the physical preparation, they've got all the nutrition sorted, and they know exactly what they're going to be doing in terms of the pacing. So we could talk about training plans and preparation, heart rate variability and meal plans and all that kind of stuff we do in coaching. But at the end of the day, the feeling of being a coached athlete we want you to have is one of being totally prepared for race day. And hopefully we've managed to do a little bit of that through these webinars. But I guess if you want a bit more of that, then we'd absolutely love to hear from you and, have you as one of our coached athletes on the team. So usually our team's closed at this time of year. We're actually going to close the team down for new entrants from the end of this week, but we wanted to keep it open for people who've just finished Ironman UK and are going, I'm racing again this year. I'm going to go back to another Ironman, or I'm going to Kona. I want to get some coaching for this. So we'll be wrapping our coached athletes up on Friday of this week, and then we'll be reopening again, I think, in September for a new intake then. But for any athletes who are on here or who are watching the call on a replay, our special offer is if you sign up for an annual coaching package, we'll extend it to the end of September 2024. So you effectively get a couple of extra months for free. And we're going to knock £200 off the price of an annual coaching package the people who've done Ironman UK. So we'll follow up with an email to everybody tomorrow who's on the call or who's registered. And if you'd like to take advantage of that, let's have you in before Friday of this week. And we'd love to help you out as much as we can and have you on your next start line feeling all wrapped in coaching cotton wool and fully prepared as well as you possibly can be. Yeah, is there anything you want to add, Andy?
No. I think like Rob said, we don't like to sell.
No.
We'd rather,
We're much better coaches than we are selling.
We'd rather use the webinars and the various topics that we've covered over time to give you an insight into how we approach things and kind of give you a bit of a peek behind the curtains as to what it's like, what the experience is like for our coached athletes. So hopefully we've been able to do that. And for what it's worth, I don't know if we said this, but all bar one of our athletes at Ironman UK finished, didn't they?
Yeah.
And the poor guy who didn't was violently ill.
Yeah.
All the way through the day, so it was kind of out of his control.
Yeah.
And we've got a couple of guys going to Kona. So Nicola, you will see some Team OA people.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was
We've got one at Kona
and one in
Nice.
Nice. Yeah,
That's right. Which is great.
Representing at the World Champs.
But listen, thanks very much for joining us, all of you. Congratulations if you managed to get yourself to the finish line. Honestly, it's a massive, massive achievement. I'm not just saying this because we're working with Ironman UK, but I genuinely believe, I've been to, most of the Ironmans around the world. It is the toughest course, especially the bike course. And in those weather conditions, absolutely hats off to you for completing it. It's one of the toughest things you can do. And if you didn't complete it and you DNF'd for whatever reason, just be aware that it was an extremely tough ask on any day, but especially on those days. Hopefully you can apply some of the principles we've talked about tonight to your next Ironman. And hopefully we'll have some good news about more Ironman UK races in the future. Who knows? But for now, we've got Wales still coming up. We've got Cork still coming up. Hopefully you guys will consider those in future or races around the world as well. But hats off to you if you finished. Commiserations if you didn't. And I hope that you hope this isn't the end of your Ironman story. I hope you come back and you finish it off at different events.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right, guys, thanks very much for joining us. Thanks for watching the replay, if you're on the replay. And we shall hopefully see you guys again soon. Take good care of yourselves.
See you, everyone.